Hey everyone, I'm Carol Diane, and this is Happiness Reclaimed. You were born for the pursuit of happiness, which means rising toward your potential, mentally, physically, and spiritually, living a life of love with deep meaning and purpose. We're leaving behind the emotional stress, bad health, and empty spirituality of today to practice powerful life strategies in a mind, body, spirit approach to wellness. It's time to reclaim your life. Let's go. Today we're covering Powerful Life Strategy number 2. As I said before, our first 3 strategies alone might be enough to revolutionize your life. If you actually do use them, I think it's likely you'll improve all your relationships and just overall create a much happier life. That said, please remember that everything I say is for educational purposes only, and at no time am I telling you what to do in a specific situation. So your participation in any way with the Happiness Reclaimed organization signifies your understanding of and agreement with these terms. Now, if you haven't listened to strategy number 1, I suggest you turn to that first and then come on back. Oh, and please like, share, and subscribe so that you never have to miss an episode, and you can help others as well by spreading the word. So, with all that out of the way, let's talk about strategy number 2. If more and more of us are using strategy number 1, then we're replacing those absolute sounding, dictatorial, overgeneralizing, know-it-all, or depressing statements with general I statements. So now strategy number 2 becomes a whole lot easier. And here it is. Agree before disagreeing. And you might think, how can I do that? I don't agree with this person. Well, hold on a minute. Hang in through this broadcast and the broadcast on strategy number 3, and I think you'll see all kinds of amazing possibilities that will dramatically change your life. And yes, I am talking about instant change, not 100% change, but instant change. And even if you can't agree on anything, you can at least affirm the person, and we'll get to that near the end of this show. So let's call this new kind of communication collaborative dialogue, or additive dialogue, or validation. We're collaborating to build a common understanding, common ground. We're trying to add to the other's comments rather than contradict them if possible. And we're validating the views these people hold if possible. Here's a sample conversation for you. We'll use the statement we ended with in the strategy number 1 broadcast. So Susie says, I think, generally speaking, parents are deeply concerned about their children's welfare. Notice we have a general I statement. The I think makes it an I statement, and the phrase generally speaking makes it a general I statement. Now, if you have sat back and observed any kind of group discussion, as I have for decades, whether it's a bunch of friends talking or a family gathering or any kind of meeting, not all the time, but sometimes have you noticed people responding essentially like this? Not this specific topic, of course, but this type of response. Nah, I think a lot of parents are consumed with their own problems and they can't think about their kids at all. I'd call that response kind of a gentle and easygoing response, but it was a statement of disagreement. But sometimes, if you have observed enough of these discussions, you'll hear this. That's not true. I know a lot of parents who are so consumed with their own problems, they're not thinking about their kids at all. I purposely acted that out with just a tiny bit of anger because if you observe enough people, you'll start to see some who are hostile, like there's some kind of battle to be won. Or in other cases, They're not really hostile to the other person, but they're carrying some pain, maybe some anger from the past, and those feelings are noticeable as they talk. We also, by the way, know that strong feelings like that can influence how we interpret the other person's comments, possibly causing us to jump to conclusions and misinterpret what they said. But with regard to the little conversation that I've acted out for you, here's the question for today. Do they really disagree? Or is the second person's interpretation and response creating a disagreement and creating an argument? I would suggest to you the second person is creating the disagreement and the argument. Think of it this way. Imagine a pie chart of all parents. Susie's phrase, generally speaking, suggests maybe a majority or more. And we have to understand that Susie's point is not really about an exact percentage. It's not that important to her whether it's definitely more than 50%. Who but God would have that kind of data about how each parent truly feels on the inside? So it doesn't really matter what the exact percentage is. Susie is just trying to say that she would optimistically tend to think that more often than not, parents do care about their children's welfare. And we know that from her use of the phrase, generally speaking. So just for the sake of analyzing this discussion, let's say even 75% or 3/4 of parents do care about their children, because 75% or 3/4 of a circle pie chart is easy to draw and easy to picture in our minds. Now our second person thinks a lot of parents don't care, and any percent that takes up the rest of the pie chart would certainly qualify as a lot of parents, right? So the two ideas actually are completely compatible with each other, especially because the percentages aren't the issue. But when person number 2 responds in a disagreeing way, how do you think Susie feels on the inside? I say something that's most likely true, and she just has to argue with me. She does that a lot. I'm getting to the point where I don't even want to be around her. That's how Susie can start to feel, especially when this kind of disagreement or arguing behavior occurs repeatedly, or when the emotions are running high. And trust me, I've sat back and observed group discussions for decades, and many people are habitually talking like this to one another, and I'm guessing they don't even realize how they sound. And what happens when you have a recurring or a repeating pattern, especially when people are being told they're wrong? People get more and more irritated, right? So instead, what if person number 2 says this? Yes, I agree that many parents are concerned about their children's needs. That's the agreement or common ground or validation or whatever you want to call it. Because after all, isn't it likely true that there are a lot of caring parents out there? But after the agreement and the building of common ground, person number 2 is then free to stand up for his or her own deeply felt perception of life and add to the reality that the two of them are constructing in their dialogue. That's why I call it additive or collaborative dialogue. So person number 2 can add the next sentence. I also think it's the case that other parents are struggling so much their minds are elsewhere. There's the additive comment. So put the two parts together and we have this. Yes, I agree that many parents are concerned about their children's needs. I also think it's the case that other parents are struggling so much their minds are elsewhere. Susie then says, yes, I'm sure that's true too, which is more common ground, more validation. And Susie should have no problem agreeing with person number 2 because that's the other logical possibility. And there is definitely room left in our pie chart, right? And then the two of them can take the discussion in any direction they want after that, or they can move to a different topic. So what I'm trying to show you is how much discord and friction people in this society are creating simply because of the way they are interpreting the other person and then phrasing their response. And the other point is, how do people feel when they're continually told they're wrong, when they're not wrong? I think we all know the answer. They hold a piece of the overall truth, and the other person is focusing on a different piece of the overall truth, a different part of the pie chart, if you will. So we have a cultural pattern here where people might not even realize what they're doing, but they're creating a lot of negative feeling and resentment when there was absolutely no rational reason for it. We can see this happening in personal conversations and also in the public arena, on TV news shows, for example. If people find it irritating to be told they're wrong, even when they're right, is it any wonder that more and more people are looking for people who will just agree with them and just say, "Yep, you're right"? So here we have another side of the argument that I did not bother to cover in my book, Happiness Reclaimed. Maybe some of us who have finally been pushed to wanting to just be around people who agree with us, maybe we're not all a bunch of narcissists who have to have complete and absolute agreement to feel good about ourselves. Maybe more and more of us are just sick and tired of this senseless way of arguing that doesn't even make logical sense. But maybe some of us haven't even figured out why we feel so annoyed during some of these conversations. What I'm showing you is how easy it is to fix this. We find a way to agree before disagreeing. From what I've seen, this senseless arguing does seem to be a bit of an epidemic these days. Or the other frequent problem is that people don't verbally disagree out loud with the first person. They'll just totally ignore the first person's comment and then state their competing idea, as though that first comment was never even made. That, in my view, is also bad communication, lacking in social graces, lacking in generosity, lacking in collaboration and respect for others, and perhaps showing a self-focused approach in life. Generally speaking, we should not be ignoring what someone else just said. It's not quite as much a direct assault on the first person's comment, but it is still a form of disrespect, and yes, I would even say rudeness. So with strategy number 2, I'm stepping forward to say, hey everyone, here's something that's easy to fix and will save us all a whole lot of misery. And if we'll just give more thought to how we're expressing ourselves, we can eliminate a lot of senseless arguing and start building more common ground. Because in many cases, the common ground is already there. It's our communication style that's doing the damage. And you know, this is something that even a grade schooler can learn. So how about if we start teaching American school kids how to communicate? I've been thinking more generally about the damage that's being done in our culture and all the animosity that's being created out there. I'm guessing you've noticed it. Of course, there are multiple causes for cultural problems. I'm not saying this is the only problem. But what I am saying is, let's go for the low-hanging fruit and let's start solving some easy problems first and start using our heads, and then we can turn to the more challenging problems that still remain. And changing our communication style will help us solve those bigger problems too. Just imagine how we could change our lives if we just start following strategy number 2. Agree before disagreeing when possible. Another way of saying this is, let's start thinking more about how each of us feels as we walk out of the room. Do we all feel understood and validated and united with others as we face this tough thing called life? Or do we feel put down and told we're wrong about everything? Did that discussion feel like an ego battle rather than an uplifting collaboration? Which seems like the better idea to you? And can you imagine the difference on a broader scale? A calmer, more civil society in which we collaborate to solve problems and respect one another? It's not a utopian dream, it's achievable, and that's part of the vision here at Happiness Reclaimed. We'll reject these patterns even when we see them on news programs, and we work to create a new and better way of relating to one another. What a great way for us to lower our stress hormones. We can feel heard, understood, respected, and validated for the piece of the truth that we hold. And we're more likely to feel better about the other person. No one feels attacked or demeaned for being wrong, and no one feels rudely ignored. So at this point, you might be wondering, what if they truly are making a statement that is undeniably false? Well, be careful there. Have you lived long enough to experience being absolutely sure about something and then realizing later you were wrong and that you were given false information? A little caution and a little humility can really help us. There are also situations in which the first person's statement, which at first sounds totally wrong, could be taken to be true when we realize they are using or defining terms differently. But let's say that what they said really is false. Okay, if you've got the statistics or evidence to prove that, and you're sure the statistics weren't twisted due to bias, and the researchers weren't fashioning their results to please the people who paid for the study, and the researchers have no profit motive coming from the results and no political agenda, and the news media wrote about all of this accurately and fairly and didn't oversimplify the issue, and the truth's not being censored, and there aren't other good quality studies that contradict this one, and you'd be willing to put your reputation on the line, then you just have to do two simple things. Let's use an example. Let's say person number one says, heart disease only kills people over the age of 70. And we're very confident this is false. So here is your two-step response. Step one, check your understanding because you might be hearing wrong. So are you saying you think it only kills people over the age of 70 and people younger than 70 never die from it? They might surprise you and say, well, come to think of it, there have been younger people who died too. And then your disagreement just vanished. But if they say, yep, that's what I said, then your next step is go right back to your I statement, which is strategy number one. I've read it has been fatal for people younger than that as well. You stand your ground based on what you know. You give them something to think about. You plant a seed, and you move on emotionally and spiritually. I don't mean you leave the relationship or leave their physical presence. I mean you maintain your sense of inner peace. You move on in the sense that you walk past that power struggle lying there in the dirt. Just walk on by it. There's no need to pick up that power struggle. You are now free from that compulsion. We might call this healthy detachment. I've read it has been fatal for people younger than that. Just let it go. Breathe. You get to relax. It's not your problem. No need to control. Take a good, deep breath of freedom. If this is an issue where you truly need to change that person's mind, the less you push, the more likely you are to create change anyway. Just plant a seed at first. How you approach a topic really matters. Patience and timing matter. Now remember, even this broadcast is a generalized statement, so we're not talking about those exceptions where what I'm describing might not make sense, such as, for example, when we're dealing with a life or death situation and we have to have some instant agreement. As always, you'll need to use your own good judgment when to apply these ideas and when to use a different approach. And finally, here are a couple more techniques. If you truly can't agree about a solution to a problem, you can at least say, I agree that this is a serious problem. I want to find the best solution possible. Try not to use the word but, as in, but I don't think your solution will work, because the word but kind of throws out your first sentence to some degree. Use and if you feel the need for a conjunction. I agree that this is a serious problem, and I want us to find the best solution possible. And one last tip, which is what I mentioned at the beginning. You can, at the very least, use the affirm strategy. I appreciate that you're so concerned about this problem. Thank you so much for your commitment. I do agree that we need to think what action, if any, to take right now. When you express appreciation to them, you are affirming them. So the bottom line for us in this series is that if you do start using these powerful strategies, I think you'll be amazed at how all your relationships improve and your overall life experience improves as well. Please like, share, and subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode and so that others you know can hear this as well. If you have any questions at all, please contact me at happinessreclaimed.com. I'll try to answer those questions in a future broadcast. So that's it for today. Love you guys.